Welcome back to Skyrim, everybody. Today we're returning to the Rift, to the city of Riften, to explore another of its most notorious faction's curiosities, although this is more of a story for those who care to find it, rather than a baffling, open-ended mystery. However, of course, we must do away with this crisp, open air, and head into the city's underground tunnel system. I am, of course, talking about the Ratway, for it's down here that we can find the Ragged Flagon, an underground tavern of sorts that serves as the home of the Thieves Guild, whose name for the uninitiated should be rather self-explanatory. Now, the guild has something of a habit for picking up strays with elusive backstories, as we've already gone over in exploring the frustrating mystery of Rune. But there's another character down in the Ragged Flagon system named after a stone with a tragic story of her own. And her name, or should I say pseudonym, is Sapphire. Beneath the surface of this rugged thief, there's a tale that, though not awfully deep, is incredibly interesting. So sit yourselves down, grab yourselves a brew, perhaps even a biscuit, as we take a bit of time to dive into the tragic story of Sapphire. Now, our first run-in with Sapphire occurs as early as our arrival in Riften. Once we've made it through the front gates, having passed a sketchy guard's attempt at shaking us down, letting us know this is a sketchy town, and we've promptly told Maul to fuck, we'll happen upon a bridge leading across the canal to the Bee and Barb, where we'll witness Sapphire attempting to shake some money out of a fellow named Shadow.
Get over here.
I'm really getting tired of your excuses. When you borrowed the money, you said you'd pay it back on time and for double the usual fee.
I know I did. But how was I to know the shipment would get robbed?
Next time, keep your plans quieter, and nothing would have happened to it.
What? Are you telling me you robbed it? Why? Why are you doing this to me?
Look, Shadra, last warning. Pay up or else. All I care about is the gold. Everything else is your problem.
We can quickly discern that Shadow has found himself in quite the pickle indeed, and of course our first objective is to simply ask him about it. What kind of trouble are you in?
I owe a great deal of money to someone, and I think they cheated me. I don't know what to do.
Tell me the details.
I was able to work out a deal with the stables in Whiterun to sell me some of their tack and harnesses. I borrowed some gold from Sapphire to pay for the shipment, but it got robbed before it even arrived. Now Sapphire wants her money back, and if I don't pay her, I think she's going to kill me.
Yeah, no worries, I'll help you with that.
You will? Oh, thank you.
So, Sapphire lent him money for a shipment that was robbed on its way to Riften, and he suspects she was behind that, and now she's come for her money. And should the man not pay, he fears that she might kill him, making her guilty of usury, extortion, perhaps even theft. And since we know her to be a member of the Thieves Guild, that wouldn't exactly be a shocking twist. Conclusion, Shadow's a bit of an idiot who needs to choose his bedfellows more carefully. He should know better than to trust a member of the Thieves Guild, but hey, maybe he didn't know that. Nonetheless, we come away with a miscellaneous objective to head to the Bee and Barb and try and convince Sapphire to drop Shadow's debt.
Yeah? What's your problem?
I wanted to talk about Shadow's debt.
I knew that stupid kid would try and find a way to weasel out of his debt. Look, this is really simple. I lent him some gold, he promised to pay me back, and now he says he's broke. End of story.
You and I both know this is a setup.
I don't care. A deal's a deal.
Drop the debt, or answer to me.
Are you kidding me? I've got the entire Thieves Guild at my back. What have you got?
Early on, Sapphire is unmoved by us, leaving us with the only option of paying off Shadow's debt for him. However, from this conversation we can confirm Sapphire is a member of the guild, therefore Shadow entering a pact with her was always going to end badly, and he should have known that. As if we can weasel that information out of her within 1 minute, you'd have thought he, a local who's been here for a while, would have known that. But that's besides the point. This introduction of sorts establishes Sapphire as a tough, apathetic thief, one capable of setting this trap for Shadow to fall into, then presumably at this stage robbing his shipment, and then the intimidation required to ensure he pays her back. But to begin with, we're not given much cause to be sympathetic towards her. After all, she's just a thug intimidating a poor stable hand she screwed over, and that isn't exactly a raving introduction for an individual you'd want to like. But upon our arrival in the Ratway and our introduction to the Thieves Guild, joining the shady organisation with whatever motivation you think works, we can of course begin to learn more. There's plenty of throwaway dialogue that doesn't tell us much of anything.
When people ask my real name, know what I tell them? Don't ask. Sure, I might have some dirt in my past, but that's just ancient history.
This tells us that Sapphire is not Sapphire's true name. As for her past, she's not necessarily open to talking about that either. However, we do learn that she refers to herself as Sapphire because she likes stealing them.
Don't get me wrong, I'll steal any gem that isn't nailed down. But there's something about those blue stones that gets my blood boiling.
And she proves more than willing to brag about her capabilities.
I'm a Deadeye marksman, lethal with a blade and dangerous in bed. And it only gets better from there. Last time someone cheated me, I cut off their hand. Still have it, actually.
Now, those aren't capabilities that I'd necessarily attribute directly to a thief, especially with the Thieves Guild not being big on killing where they can avoid it, which is drilled into us by Brynjolf fairly early on. And sure enough, you can find the thieves down here training in combat more than anything, but the one we know as Sapphire seems a bit more casually threatening than the others. We know this because she expresses she's more than willing to stoop to violence, and in dealing with Shadow's debt, he voices his concerns that she might kill him if he doesn't pay up. She also claims to have kept the hand of one who previously cheated her. But before we engage her in deeper conversation, what's perhaps most interesting at this stage is a note we can find sitting comfortably atop a barrel in the Ragged Flagon cistern that simply reads as follows. Keep your eyes on Sapphire. There's more to her than meets the eye. It is unclear who scrawled this warning and who it's intended for, but it would seem fellow members of the guild are somewhat suspicious of her. This may very well be a nod to her more withdrawn nature versus the other thieves. It may allude to some other motivations, which I highly doubt frankly, or it may simply be a reference to the idea that she does jobs outside the purview of the Thieves Guild. Take for instance Shadow's debt. Should we confront her while we're a member of the guild, the conversation goes a bit differently.
Back off. This action's all mine. No room for anyone else in the guild on this one.
Do me a favor and drop the debt.
Why should I bother? I've already made a bunch of coin off of his shipment, so anything else I squeeze out of him would be a bonus. Oh, wait a second. I see what this is. You want me to cut you in, or you'll rat me out to Brynjolf. Tell you what, I'll give you a share right now if you forget the whole thing.
Not only do we get the opportunity to profit off the world of pain that Sapphire has put Shadow in, we could learn she could really do without Brynjolf learning of this particular scheme. And we also get confirmation that she did indeed rob Shadow's shipment, so in other words, she's double dipping. But the main point is, other members of the guild might want to keep an eye on her because she's denying the guild of its slice. And if you carry out this confrontation as guild master, she'll claim she was going to cut the guild in but simply forgot. So everything else aside, at the very least she's committing the Thieves Guild equivalent to tax evasion. So perhaps that note simply alludes to the fact that she's perhaps a tad too self-serving even for the likes of a guild of thieves. But considering this is written down and not spoken aloud, even though this is likely bouncing from one higher up within the guild to another, therefore they could in theory openly discuss whatever they please, and such trivial issues could just directly be brought to Sapphire. Perhaps there's a slice more to it. I don't think it boils down to a simple cheeky rule break as that would easily be hashed out. The simplest explanation is her withdrawn nature leads to other members of the guild not fully trusting her. Is that enough? Maybe, I suppose. You've got to remember we're dealing with a guild of criminals here. Surely enough, all kinds of scum make their way in, and if Mercer Frey is any indication, that scum isn't always benign. Maybe this scrawling is even the writing of Mercer Frey. After all, the best way to ensure you look loyal when you're really not is to point out somebody else who you can identify as not being loyal. But let's shift off of the letter. Aside from bringing up the idea that somebody down here doesn't trust Sapphire, it's a dead end. Now there's one more aspect worthy of bringing up before we simply talk to her and get her backstory off of her. There is something mentioned in Skyrim's official game guide that might be of some value. Though it should be noted, this guide does have a noticeable whack of inaccuracies. It provides Sapphire with the following summary. Sapphire, the name she goes by within the guild, left the Dark Brotherhood several years ago to satisfy her lust for wealth. Joining the Thieves Guild, she instantly became a natural at larceny, specialising in lifting the valuable and favoured gemstones bearing her name. Sapphire is extraordinarily withdrawn, spending her time training, always honing her skills with both the bow and the blade. So perhaps she did, before coming to the Thieves Guild, spend some time with the Dark Brotherhood. This, however, is never mentioned in-game, but it could explain her noticeably more overtly violent implications through her words when compared to other members of the guild. However, since this isn't brought up once in the actual game, forgive me for not taking it as gospel. Furthermore, I think a case can be made for it not making a right lot of difference. Anyway, once we found ourselves properly settled into the guild, having made our way into the Ratway and then carried out our initiation of going around Riften beating up business owners, we've acquired our Thieves Guild armour, and it's funny to me that that's a thing. After all, why would a faction of criminals that prefer to steal things without killing people, a task best suited to remaining incognito, need a uniform? And perhaps most importantly, we've gained access to the Ragged Flagon cistern. Provided we've got the admin out the way, members of the guild that can be found here can, to an extent, be engaged in conversation. And that includes Sapphire, whom we can ask about her real name.
Look, if I was a little harsh before, I just want you to know it's because you were new. Know what I mean?
Not really. So, will you tell me your real name?
Look, I don't really know you. I don't even really know anyone here. Why do you care anyway? It's not like we're family. This is a business.
Something had to make you this angry.
Look, you want to know about me? All right, I'll tell you. I'll tell you about the time I was a young girl, barely out of her teens, living on a pig farm in the middle of nowhere. Didn't have a coin to spend between our entire family. Ate the same slop we fed our livestock.
Sounds horrible.
Oh wait, it gets much better. How about the fact that our farm was attacked by bandits, and that they killed my entire family who didn't even brandish a weapon against them? Here's the best part. They took me as a prize and violated me for a fortnight. Tossed me from bandit to bandit like...
You don't have to continue.
It's fine. I had to tell someone, I suppose. Carrying around a weight like that, it hurts after a while. Cuts you inside like a dagger to the heart.
So how did you escape?
Over time, I managed to gain their confidence. Then one night I grabbed a knife, waited until they fell asleep, and cut their throats. I never returned to that pig farm, you know. There's nothing for me there. So that's my sad story. What do you think?
You still never told me your name.
Maybe one day. Just not today.
Well, that's anticlimactic. So now we have this story of how this now hardy thief lost her entire family to a group of bandits, and the horrors that followed surviving that incident, no doubt hardening her to the world. The only hole I can think to prod is I don't recall seeing a single pig ever in Skyrim. Otherwise, we now have an understanding of Sapphire's tragic backstory, but she still won't tell us her name. And there is absolutely nothing we can do to prise that information out of her. You could be the guild master and that conversation would play out the exact same. So, as far as the game of the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim is concerned, that information does not exist. But fortunately for us, that's not where today's story ends. However, we will need to go on a bit of a voyage, but before we do, it's best we stock up on some knowledge, specifically knowledge from this book. A book detailing shadow marks penned by the Thieves Guild's very own Delvin Mallory. Specifically, the initial marking as seen in the glossary, that of a member of the guild. And with that we journey forth from the bitter cold lands of Skyrim, across the ocean aboard the Northern Maiden, to the ash-battered shores of Solstheim. It's here in the Dunmer settlement of Raven Rock that we can find a Breton blacksmith bearing a familiar name, Glover Mallory, who bears more than a good striking resemblance to Delvin, aside of course from how they speak. Now, should we ponder this family resemblance, we can of course spy the guild shadow mark by Glover Mallory's door. And should we ask him how he came to be here in Raven Rock, he'll say the following.
A fine question, and the one that I hear most often from visitors to our town. I wish I had a more romantic tale to tell, but I was simply seeking my fortune and chose Raven Rock to ply my trade. Besides, knowing how to repair bone mold armor wasn't very useful in Riften. I had a friend over there, a dark elf named Van Ryth, a very talented armor smith. Spent a lot of time with the guy swapping smithing techniques. Learned a heck of a lot, including how to repair bone mold. After he moved on to greener pastures, I decided to pack up, move out here, and put those lessons to the test. Been here ever since.
So, his name's Mallory, he has a shadow mark on his door, and he previously lived in Riften. Furthermore, upon his first greeting, he asks us to retrieve an ancient Nordic pickaxe from a fellow named Crescius Corellius, and when asked why he doesn't just get the guards to do that, he says the following.
I prefer to handle these things on my own.
Perhaps this speaks to an unscrupulous past. Maybe he's not fond of the authorities too much, or perhaps the ancient Nordic pickaxe was not acquired entirely legally. After all, if he is in any way related to Delvin Mallory of the Thieves Guild, maybe he was a member of the guild himself. And that is what the shadow mark basically confirms. So naturally, before we continue, I did help him get his prized pickaxe back.
Tell him I hope he drops the thing on his foot.
And Glover's so appreciative of this that he lets us keep the pickaxe. That's nice of him. However, of course, another avenue of dialogue with Glover Mallory here is to simply speak to him about the shadow mark. Being a member of the guild, we have that option. I noticed the shadow mark by your door.
Well, well, it's been a long time since someone from the guilds bothered to make their way out here. So tell me, how's my brother Delvin? Still spending his nights at the Ragged Flagon trying to win Vex's heart?
He has a very unusual way of going about that. All things considered, for the time being, he's well.
Good to hear. Tam Layabout never even bothers to send his own flesh and blood a letter saying how he's doing. Can you imagine? Anyway, I suppose you're looking for work. Well, I got bad news. This place is drier than a damn bone.
Nothing at all?
Eager to make some coin, eh? That's the spirit. I'll tell you what. The guild's got a problem out here that I've been trying to deal with for years, but haven't been able to handle.
The Thieves Guild has a problem out here.
Don't look at me like that. I'm all alone out here, with no one to watch my back. And besides, it's really my problem anyway. I caused it.
What did you do?
A fellow Breton who went by the name Esmond Tyne showed up on my doorstep about a fortnight ago. He noticed the shadow marks like you did, and I thought he was one of us.
I take it he stole something from you.
That he did, right out from under my nose. Can you believe it? It's my own formula for improved bone mold. Took me years to perfect.
Basically, upon learning that we're a member of the Thieves Guild, Glover Mallory sends us on a quest to retrieve his improved bone mold formula from Esmond Tyne, who headed up towards the Reeklings at Castle Karstag to the north of the Isle. It's a reasonably straightforward bit of quest. Of course, Tyne here has seen better days, but thankfully he has the bone mold formula on his remains. But what's most important is we take this back to Glover, for the reward is what we're interested in.
Here, I want you to take this key. Head inside my house and unlock the door in the basement. Help yourself to whatever you like inside. I won't be using it anymore.
And with that, in order to retrieve our reward, we need to head into the basement of Glover Mallory's abode. Before we do that, in a lockbox noticeably not in Glover's basement, we can find a couple of sapphires. I mention this because in Sapphire's inventory, we can find a couple of sapphires. And this may seem like a nothing detail, but once we venture inside the basement, everything becomes abundantly clear. We can find Blackguard armor in here, which is basically Thieves Guild armor minus the sleeves and grey, which is awfully similar to Sapphire's armor. But what we've come for is this letter by the lockbox. And here's what it says. My dearest daughter Sapphire. It's with a heavy heart that I write this letter. For years I've thought about how I could tell you this, and each time I imagined it would be face to face. I'm ashamed for what I did, and I hope that someday you'll learn to forgive me. Whatever you do, don't blame Delvin for any of this. He didn't know. Long after I joined the guild, I was sent to rob a caravan that was stopping at a tiny farming village not far from the border of Skyrim. When I arrived there, I was a day early and decided to sleep for the night in the barn of a pig farm. I awoke the next morning when the most beautiful woman I'd ever laid eyes upon walked in to do her chores. She wasn't even frightened when she saw me. In an instant, I think we had both fallen in love. I ended up living with that woman in that tiny little village for a year until she was with child, and then, like a coward, I ran away. I was a thief and I didn't want to end up a farmer. It was a terrible thing to do. I didn't have the courage to return to that village for almost 15 years. When I finally decided to visit, it was too late. It had been raided by bandits and burned to the ground. Everyone was either dead or gone, including you, my only child. Years later, when you were recruited by Brynjolf, I couldn't believe my eyes. You're a spitting image of your mother, and I knew it was you in an instant. Only the gods know how you survived that attack on your village and why you followed in my footsteps, but I have to assume it was meant to be. I've wanted to walk right up to you and embrace you, to tell you the truth, but I was still a coward. I decided to leave Riften instead of facing your anger. I said my goodbyes to Delvin and I headed for Solstheim, as far from the truth as I could get. I'm sorry, my daughter. I'm sorry for never being there to hold you at night, or to protect you from whatever hardships you've endured. One day, I hope you'll make the journey to Solstheim to visit your father. Glover Mallory. So, some answers to Sapphire's past can be found in this note in Glover Mallory's basement here on Solstheim, revealing that he is her true father, as Sapphire's dialogue didn't bring up having an absent father, so it's likely she was raised around a man whom she'd assumed to be her father. However, her father was alive all this time, first among thieves in the guild in Riften, and then upon her arrival in the Ragged Flagon, he eventually ran away and came to live here, living with the regret of not facing up to his absence from his own daughter's life, and regretting that choice ever since. And, well, though we get no prompt to do so, we can actually relay this letter to Sapphire, even if we cannot quiz Glover about it, returning to Riften to give the end of Sapphire's tragic tale a positive spin. I think this belongs to you.
I can't believe it. All those years on the farm, and my mother never told me about any of this. Words can't even begin to describe how much I appreciate you bringing this to me. Here, take this. I used to carry it for good luck, but I think you deserve it more than I do.
And that is kind of it. The Dragonborn DLC gives us a very tacked-on ending in truth, and it doesn't not feel that way. But for our troubles, at least we get an incredibly rare, exquisite sapphire, worth a whopping 5,000 septims. Good luck finding a vendor with 5,000 septims to spare, and that brings us nicely to the conclusion of Sapphire's story. There are other loose ends, of course. We don't get to learn where exactly Sapphire's village was, and we can't really find it in-game, though Glover's letter suggests it's near the border of Skyrim, so I'm inclined to believe that it's not exactly in Skyrim. Otherwise, common sense would dictate he'd refer to that border as that of the province on the other side. And I must say it's a bit unsatisfying that Glover has no dialogue pertaining to this letter of his own, and it still gets us no closer to the bottom of what Sapphire's true name actually is. And her surname certainly isn't Mallory, though it's there should she ever desire to claim it, but the point stands we're no closer to knowing the name that she was raised with. That information, to my knowledge, remains unobtainable, but at least we got a fun story to unravel. But with that, the video ends. I'd like to thank you all for watching. I hope you all enjoyed it. If you did, be sure to go ahead, leave a like, subscribe, share the channel with your friends, all that wonderful stuff. It would be massively appreciated. Maybe pop me a follow on some social media if you fancy it, but I completely understand if not with all of those things. And let me know what you'd like to see me cover from this game next in the comment section. Or if you don't fancy that, then maybe head over to my Instagram and pop me a DM over there. I do read my messages and make a habit of replying to as many as possible. But look, with any luck I'll be seeing you all very soon with another video at some point, but until next time, please take care and goodbye.